Welcome back to Bammerhab, Season 4, Episode 4. Bammerhab is a podcast about one writer's attempt to dig deeper into God's Word by exploring the Greek and Hebrew words inside it. I'm SDG Morgan, and I'll be your tour guide, again, through this dig. Today's episode is another interview, this time with Pastor Chris Barras. And the phrase that he chose is Greek, anakinose, from Romans 12:2, which is, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will." The Greek word for renewing is anakienosis, which is a compound of kainos, which is one of two Greek words for new. One of the Greek words for new is neo, like in the Matrix. The other Greek word for new is kainos. Neo means new, but new like young, like the day is new, or the new baby. So neo means new as relates to time. Kainos is a little bit different. In English, a better translation for kainos might be brand new, totally new, a different thing replacing the old thing that once was. It doesn't relate to time necessarily, it relates to quality. So if you're selling a young goat, and you're describing that goat to a buyer, then that goat would be a neo goat, a new goat, a young goat, a baby goat, a kid, new in time. But then if you sell that goat, and you get a new lamb who is very old, then that new lamb is a kainos lamb, a new and different kind of animal that is completely replacing the previous young one with an old lamb, but a new kind of animal. Confused? Apologies. Think of it like this. Neo is young, new. Kainos is different, new. So when Paul says to renew your mind, he's not saying to revert back to what your mind was like as a kid when it was young and new. He's saying you're going to get a whole different new kind of mind, a peace that's new, a worldview that's new, a relationship with God that is new, an imagination that's new and different. Another word for this is transformation, which Paul employs just before anakinose. And you can probably guess which word Paul uses for transformation. Can you? Yeah, it's a specific verb tense of metamorpho, the exact root of the word metamorphosis, whereby something changes shape, changes form, transforms. And transformation is the main theme of Chris Barras' ministry. He's taught dozens of classes precisely on this theme. I've attended several of them as he's my pastor here in Richmond. So before we get to the interview, I'll just give you a little information about Chris Barras. He grew up just north of Tampa, Florida. He attended Cincinnati Christian University, and after several years in ministry, Chris and his wife Abby moved to Richmond in January 2006. Chris began working full-time at Starbucks and part-time with a church plant in Short Pump, a suburb of Richmond. In March 2008, Chris left those jobs to launch Area 10 Faith Community in the heart of Richmond, in the city, for the city. Area 10 meets in the historic Byrd Theater, a movie theater that is 97 years old and has a Wurlitzer and giant chandeliers and old-timey decorations, and is correctly known as Richmond's Movie Palace. But back to Area 10. The goal of Area 10 Church is transformation. Transformation of the city through the transformation of each individual in the church. Discipleship leads to growth, which leads to change, and change leads to transformation, and transformation leads to renewal. And renewal in Greek is anakinosis. Okay. Chris, welcome.
Hey, good to be here with you, Sam.
Thank you. So you chose Romans 12:2, which is, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will." So for the word renew, that is the Greek word anakinenosis. So first, why did you choose this word, and what's your favorite thing about it?
For me, personally, and the way I think about what church should be doing, it almost feels like this verse and this word is the whole game. Like, what are we doing in life? What are we doing as a church? What are we trying to do in the world? We're trying to become like Jesus. So Romans 12:2 is like stating that pretty clearly, like, hey, don't be like the world around you, and instead be like this, be different, be renewed, be born again in your mind, get a fresh way of thinking, which is, I think, more than just thinking. Like, don't just think different thoughts, but be really changed. And so I love it as a way of thinking about what the church is, but I love it personally too. Like, okay, this is what I need to do. I need to not be so sucked into the culture and I need to constantly renew my mind or practice thinking different thoughts and living out a different way of being, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I know there are two types of words for new in the New Testament, and kainos, which means new, and neos, which also means new, but with respect to age. Kainos means a fresh, new thing that is transformed from the old. So there's an element of transformation in this. And I know that's a key thought that you teach a lot on. So thinking of transformation, why is that your focus? You talked about how renewal is important and transformation is just something in the same vein.
It's sort of like, isn't that what all of us want on some level? If you have, even if you're not that ambitious, everybody I think has a sense of I'm not who I want to be, or pick a category. I don't eat like I want to. My relationships are not as strong as they should be. My relationship with God is not where I want to be. I don't pray like I should. I don't, everybody, religious or not, has this sense of like, I think I can be better. I think I want something else. And so for me, in my own quest, it's like, yeah, I want to be transformed. I want to be better. I want to be different. I want to stop doing the stupid things that I do and get on a different path. And I think everybody wants that. So this verse and these ideas are huge. I love the other word in there, the transformed by the renewing of your mind, like the transformed words, the metamorpho or whatever. Like,
Yeah, metamorpho, yeah.
yeah, I love that because I guess I was thinking about, I saw at the movie theater actually where our church meets. I saw a movie that it was a one-off movie they did there like 10 years ago. And I think the movie was called Metamorphosis, but it was basically an intelligent design explanation of how a caterpillar becomes a butterfly. And it's that word, right, that we get metamorphosis. It is this radical transformation. I mean, you almost never see that in nature like you see with a caterpillar and a butterfly. And I remember in the movie they were talking about, from a structural perspective, this would be like a Model T Ford stopping, building its own garage, and then coming out of the garage as an F-16. That's how radical, like it's massive transformation. And I just thought, oh, that's brilliant. And I think that's what I want in my life, or I think that's what God promises to give us. So that's why I think that metamorphosis idea, it's really stuck with me.
Yeah, and I was just listening to, I got this idea from Ben Palpant, who is a poet, and he was, gosh, I forget where he got it, but another poet, and I was referring to it in the first episode. He was talking how a friend of his, while he was in the middle of a really severe health diagnosis, said, "Don't despise the chrysalis." And he didn't like that at the first, not what I want to hear. But then as it went on and as he prayed about it, it kind of made sense because if you cut open a chrysalis in the middle of A, you stop all the transformation. There will be no butterfly because you chopped it open. B, if you chop it open, you can't see what's happening in the moment. It's just a bunch of goop, as he put it. And it was like, man, pain and this gross
Yeah,
environment and all the toxicity, it's just a bunch of goop. And so I've been processing that for a while. I was like, yeah, in the middle of transformation, it's not always clear what's happening. And things that are happening are slow and are incremental. And so you brought up a caterpillar and a butterfly of like, man, that is a massive change, but it is not an immediate change. And it requires a cocooning.
mm,
And someone mentioned that God, before he transforms people and while he's transforming people, tends to put them in a cave.
sure, David.
Both
Yeah.
Elijah and especially David. And David in the cave was in a period of transformation where his like shepherd boy was obviously brave enough and
Mhm.
courageous to go and face a giant, but not ready to be a king yet, because courage and wisdom are two different things. But he had to be in a cave and go through sort of hell on earth with betrayal and being hunted. But that was a metamorphosis on purpose that God always puts his future leaders into caves or cocoons. Quick note, I first heard this from Kevin Queen's sermon, Cave for a King, at Crosspoint Church in Nashville on June 9th, 2024. Link in the show notes.
Oh, that's a great point. I guess I hadn't looked at it in the cave way, but like I had a professor in college call it the tunnel of chaos.
Yeah.
I think because it sounds like you're on an amusement park ride, and you turn, and now we're going through the tunnel of chaos, and it's like Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. I don't know. You like that one room you go in, and suddenly like you're in hell or something, and then you.
Yeah. That freaked me out as a kid.
Well, of course, I don't know what they were thinking with that ride.
That is not for children.
It was like, let's send them to hell for just for
Yeah, just
one
for one
room.
room,
It'll
and
be
then they go
fun.
through this flashy light.
Yeah, but I think that tunnel of chaos idea has always stuck with me. And my wife and I have talked about it in a relationship too. Like, hey, our relationship needs to go through is going through a tunnel of chaos, and we're going to come out hopefully on the other end, and we're going to be back in the light, and it's going to be stronger. But you have to go through it. I think that's what is so hard about this trans when you read it, and Paul's like, don't be conformed. Okay, I can focus on that. I can do that. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that by testing you may discern. Well, you don't get to choose when the test comes, and you don't get to choose what it looks like, or when God wants to throw you in the cave, but it is exactly those things that are going to make you stronger and be transformed. I wish transformation came through just following like a diet plan or for the mind or whatever. Just check off the boxes spiritually and maybe physically, eat right, you'll be fine. But it's usually involves a lot of chaos and chrysalis and caves.
Yes, chrysalis and caves. Yeah. It is interesting that Paul separates do not conform to this world and be transformed, because you would sort of think they're the same thing.
Hmm.
But one is an initial step, and then the secondary step has to be after you do not conform. So take David. He's not conforming. The rest of Israel is terrified of Goliath. He's not conforming. He's going out there brave and standing on his faith. But being transformed is a second step. So the fact that they're not connected, well, I mean, they are connected, but they're not the same, is an interesting thing that Paul sort of brings out in this verse.
Yeah, the thing I get stuck on, or I guess the thing I think about is what is our responsibility? What can we own here, and what is the Lord's responsibility? I mean, when Paul says, do not be conformed to this world, clearly he means that's something we can actually do. And it's a direct command. That's not passive at all. I love my preacher growing up. When I was in high school, he told me that this verse, the J.B. Phillips paraphrase of this verse says, do not let the world around you squeeze you into its mold.
Ooh, I like that.
And
That's good.
I like that. I just like, okay, the world has a mold and it's going to try to squeeze you into it. And so what can I do about that? I mean, if Paul's saying don't be conformed to it, then there must be a way that I can do something to not be conformed to it, to not let it push me into that mold. So that sounds very active, but the be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that sounds kind of active, but not as active. I'm like, do I make transformation happen? And if so, I guess I do that by renewing my mind. What would that even look like? So to me, I could go full humanist on this and be like, this means have positive affirmations. And this means, this means limit your screen time. And oh yeah, it's all the like, here's how you're not going to be conformed. You're going to do this. And here's how you're going to be trained.
Self-help. So you kind of go by the self-help
You go
model.
super self-help on this. But I don't think that's ever really in view for Paul. It's going to be, he phrases it by the mercies of God, he says in the previous verse. And this is to the ultimate end of this is that you're going to be able to know the will of God so you can do that. So there's always like the cooperation piece there that I think has to be in place. I think that's why ultimately our self-help efforts are going to be good, but are going to fall short because it's sort of like he does the renewing in us. He does the transformation. Doesn't mean we don't have a responsibility to show up and do the work, but he's going to do the behind the scenes stuff that makes it grow.
Yeah, I remember there's a C.S. Lewis quote, and he was talking about how you need to have that element. You need to have tried to realize that you can't.
Mm.
Because if you never try and you never try the self-help and you never try for transformation, you will always assume, well, I could if I wanted to. But when you really try, you realize, wait, I actually can't go as far as what I really was aiming at. And that's when you're going to need the mercies. That's when you're going to need God. But if you never try, you will always assume I could if I wanted to.
Oh, I like that. Obviously, Lewis was the goat.
Yes.
Yeah, what that makes me think of is a guy who mentored me in some of the transformation stuff. He said, if you're going to change, you have to be willing to get wrong.
Mm, That's good.
I like that. And to me, it gets at like if you're unwilling to get wrong, then you're going to be right and unchanged forever. And we probably can all think of
Right in quotation marks.
yeah, right, right. I mean, we can think of family members probably that are like, okay, they're going to take their right in quotation marks to their grave.
Right.
They're not going to move. They're not going to budge. They're going to be, but if we're going to change, we have to be willing to get wrong. Now that's snarky or easy or fun to apply that to someone else. But if I'm trying to apply it to myself, what do I need to do to make sure that I'm getting wrong and examining what I'm doing? Because to your point, it's easier just to like not try and assume that I'm right and therefore I'm not responsible for any change.
Right.
Some circumstances like marriage will get you wrong real quick.
Yes.
Like I don't know
Anything
how it
that's
is.
up close and personal where you can't filter and hide.
Sure.
Yeah. Kids, marriage,
Yeah, and I mean
parents.
so marriage will get you wrong, parenting will get you wrong. Any type of leadership, I think, will get you wrong unless you insulate yourself and become like a dictator, I suppose. But maybe that's the problem with third world dictators. They don't have a single person in their life that can tell them they're wrong.
Yeah.
And there's the issue. And so they never get wrong, and so they never get right because of it.
So if you have the power to execute anyone who tells you you're wrong, it's bad for you.
Yeah,
Bad for the other person too.
apparently kings loved that back in the day. That was the
Yeah.
I could see how you could really get into that, but yeah, that ain't the way to go.
So in Romans 12:2, it's talking about not to be conformed to this age, and that is aeon or eon, like we'd say in English. And age makes me think of that one part in Screw Tape Letters with C.S. Lewis, where he's talking about how each age is always tempted towards the virtue closest to the vice that Satan is trying to make endemic. So, in ages of cowardice, then sympathy and empathy and more quietist beliefs are pushed as primary. Even though they're not wrong, they're close to what is wrong.
Hmm.
And in ages of aggression and violence, then courage and valor are praised as the only good virtues, and those are not wrong, those are biblical, but they're praised because they're close to the vice.
Hmm.
And he calls it running around with fire extinguishers when there's a flood. There is a good purpose for a fire extinguisher, but it's not to deal with floods. And, there's a good purpose for building the levee against the flood, but it doesn't help when you have a raging inferno. So that the wrong thing for the wrong time. So it's interesting that Paul talks about not being conformed to your time, because there are things that would be perfect in one time, not so great in another time. What is incredibly courageous for David is incredibly foolish for everybody who really wants to do it in Jeremiah's time. And God is telling them, no, no, listen, don't fight this battle. This is not the battle I told you to fight. You guys are in trouble. And everyone's like, yay, I'm David. Now, in one sense, they could be faithful. They could be doing what they think they're supposed to be doing. But in another sense, it could be a virtue out of place, out
Hmm.
of time.
Hmm.
So I just wanted your thoughts on that. How can you be conformed to an age?
That's really interesting. So when you say how can you be conformed to this age, to me it just feels like I don't have to explain that. Just do nothing, and I mean, you've heard me use this illustration before. It's just you just ride the escalator, man. Just ride it down. You can stand there and it'll take you right to the bottom. So to not be conformed means to start walking the opposite direction of the escalator, which, if anyone's ever tried it, you can't just walk and get up the escalator. You got to walk fast. You got to really go. And so I think of it that way. Like, if you want to conform to the age, just do nothing. Just do what everybody does. It's easy. It's comfortable. There's memes for it. You'll be Instagram liked.
Can be an influencer.
Yeah, be an influencer or just follow their influence, and you're conformed to the age. To walk a different path, though, requires a lot of energy and a lot of work to do something different. I was thinking about, gosh, I'm not going to get this right. You may remember this. C.S. Lewis gave a speech. He kind of makes the point of like you have to read history because
Oh, yeah.
it like
Yeah, the people who read history are immune from the cataract of nonsense coming out of their times.
yes, yes, yes.
Quick note, the full C.S. Lewis quote is from the essay Learning in Wartime, and it is, "A man who has lived in many places is not likely to be deceived by the local errors of his native village. The scholar has lived in many times and is therefore in some degree immune from the great cataract of nonsense that pours from the press and the microphone of his own age.
Because, you don't know the future. You're living in the present and you can study the
Right.
past. So if you don't pay attention to history, then all you have is the present because you can't know the future.
Right.
And if all you have is the present, then you're going to be conformed to the pattern of the world. You're just going to do what everybody does because that's what you know. And that's why, and there's a lot of that. There's a lot of people arguing, that's why I hate it when people say you're on the wrong side of history. I'm like, says who? So you don't know that right now.
I think your crystal ball is cracked.
Right. It's just so lazy. And I think you do need to pay attention to like where have things gone before? And that's why reading the scripture is so valuable. Even the history parts, you're like, oh, I see this trend in our culture
Right.
right now.
Right. Some people will say you have to travel because you have to be in different cultures, but not everybody has enough money to travel, but everybody can go to the library and they can read. Everybody can get out. And I think it's the reading. If you look at David, when he comes up against Goliath, I have a strong sense he'd been reading a lot of the Pentateuch or even Joshua, because he seems to be in his mind, this is like Joshua coming up against Jericho. Everyone else is in that moment. They see the Philistines have better armor, they have better weaponry, they've been kicking butt and taking names, and so they're operating off of information,
Mhm.
and that's all real, but they don't have any history sense. They're only thinking of that day or that few years. Whereas David's coming in, he's thinking about Joshua, he's thinking about Moses, he's going back in time. You can tell from his speech, he's hearkening back to a different era. So he's got history shaping his formation. So that's how he's not conforming. He's not conforming because he's reading, because he's in the past, because he can step outside of this immediate urgency. And I've heard someone say, the tyranny of the urgent, where you don't pay attention to what's important, you only pay attention to what's closest. And that what's closest and what's urgent, I mean, it's not unreal, but it may be exaggerated to the point where you lose all track of.
I guess that's my concern, or that's what always drives me back to Paul, to Jesus, to the stories in the Old Testament, to transformation, to the scripture, is we have to tie ourselves to something that's eternal. We have to have a sense, we have to have a sense of our history. Where did this come from? We have to have a sense of our future. Where is this going? If we don't have a sense of those things, we don't know what to do right now. All we're left with is whatever's hot. What's the Chesterton phrase? It's something like all that we're left with is fashion.
Quick note, the full G.K. Chesterton quote from The Ball and Cross is, "Christianity is always out of fashion because it is always sane, and all fashions are mild insanities."
So, going back, sort of your personal testimony, how did you find Christ originally? I know you were in middle school,
Yeah, it was actually like the end of elementary school.
end of elementary.
End of elementary school, my parents got a divorce, which was a tunnel of chaos time for me. I think the same year my grandmother died, like there was just things going on in 1987. And at that point, I was friends with this kid who was a little bit of a loose cannon kind of kid, but we were sitting there and we were riding in the back of my mom's car and he just asked me, he's like, "Do you believe in God?" And I was like, "Yeah." I mean, I had sort of gone to a Presbyterian church growing up. My mom made us go because she thought it was good for us, but it didn't really connect.
Mm.
I was like an acolyte in the Presbyterian church and I did the little, I don't know why they gave young boys to be keeper of flame, but that's what we did. It's like,
Ill thought out.
I don't know if that was a good idea, but I did that. So that was really my only connection with churches. I remember sort of flannel graphs and I remember it being sort of dusty, old, whatever. This kid asked me, sitting in the car, he's like, "Do you believe in God?" And I was like, "Yeah." He said, "Have you been baptized?" I said, "No." And he goes, "Well, you should." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And he said, "Why don't you come with me?" So I started going to church with him, and it was a really good church. And I got involved with the youth group there as I kind of hit sixth grade, in part because the girls were cute and got involved there and was mentored really by a lot of older adults at the church, elders, youth group leaders that kind of poured into me. And so that was kind of me coming to Christ. And then I was baptized in 1988. And then, yeah, kind of went from there. So I got baptized, gave my life to Christ there. And at that point, with my dad out of the picture, I really feel like I was raised by my mom, who was certainly faith friendly and started going to church after I did. I was raised by my mom and the church, some men in the church that took an interest in this kid showing up with a single mother and they made a space for me, and they let me lead things even in high school, which was kind of cool.
So I was wondering if you could do like a quick elevator pitch for Area 10. And first off, what does Area 10 mean, and are there aliens?
Other ales like ale.
No, aliens, because everybody thinks it's Area 51.
Oh, aliens. Oh, I think it's ales. I was like, the drink.
Well, there's probably aliens.
No, yeah, I do get Area 51 for a while. When we started, we on a real estate map of the city of Richmond, they mark areas out and they give them numbers. So Area 10 is the center of the city of Richmond. And so for us, it was kind of real estate designation of like, it's just a way of saying here in the heart of the city. Now, not everybody knows that. I was worried that our church would just be all realtors because they're the only ones that get that, and I was like, I can't imagine just that whole gathering where everyone's like handing out their business cards. But yeah, so that's what it is. It's not like a particular biblical reference. It just means the heart of the city of Richmond. But what I actually have liked about it is it's easier to get like a web address, or it's like you're not competing with like every church that's named Grace Church or whatever it is. Okay, we got a very unique name, but that's what it is. We're a city focused church. We say in the city for the city. We want to be the best church that we can be for the city of Richmond to help it flourish. I think in a lot of cities in America, people move out of them. They just leave them to rot. And so we wanted to be a church that was like, okay, let's invest literally in the geographic area of the city. Now, obviously, a lot of our people don't live in the city, but we just say, hey, even if you don't live here, just love here and invest here. And people do, they live wherever, but they care about the city. They want to see it flourish. I would say we're a pretty gospel centered church. We love Jesus. We want to see him transform our lives. We want people to engage the scriptures and let it change them. And we're going to do that with the hopes of bringing some real change to the city and making it a better place to be.
And we meet in the Bird Theater, which is 100-year-old, 1920s, sorry, like type architecture.
I think they call it like French Baroque style, at least
Right.
the interior, Yeah, I mean it's beautiful. We had a woman guest worship lead with us last weekend, and she and I were debriefing it later, and it was like, have you ever seen a room this pretty? It's just a beautiful room, and you take it for granted. I mean, I have been in cathedrals that are incredible, and I feel like where we meet in the movie theater is almost like a cathedral, but with like a little more like modern styling. Like it's like the formality of a cathedral, but the informality of like a movie theater where you have a drink holder and
Yeah.
so it's like, so I love it.
Quick note, because the Bird Theater is nearly 100 years old, it was designated first as a Virginia Historic Landmark, then on the National Register of Historic Places. And you found out later after you started the theater that your grandfather used to preach in the theater too, right?
Yeah, so my grandfather was a Seventh-day Adventist, which I'm not, and they've got their own quirky thing going on over there. But my family's all from England on both sides of my family, and my grandfather was what the Seventh-day Adventists would claim. My grandfather was basically their Billy Graham of the British Isles back in the 1920s and teens. So he was a pretty big deal for that group, and apparently he was very funny as a preacher, a lot of humor. People say that I use a lot of humor in what I do. I maybe that's true, but he was very funny and compelling and talked a lot about the end times. And this was in the mid 20s, and post World War I. And I think there was some concern that the world is going to end. And so he preached in London and would hold these revivals, and he particularly in a movie theater that I've seen pictures of that's not that dissimilar to the one that we meet in. And yeah, he'd have 2,500 people a night come out and hear him speak.
Wow.
And you could hear a pin drop. There was descriptions about him communicating. And so he died a long time before I was born, but I've seen newsletters that he wrote back in the 20s about how it's going. And it's in the family blood, apparently. Now his kids.
This was downtown London, right?
Yeah, in London. Yeah. He was in London. He had also planted in Belfast and in Glasgow,
Oh, wow.
I think, and then finally in London. And his three kids, one of which is my dad, never became followers of Jesus, really. And he died. My grandfather died when my dad was like 5. So really, like, my dad grew up without a dad, essentially. And my dad was one of those kids who was sent to the country during the bombing of London in 1940. So my dad was 5 years old and was sent over by Liverpool to get away from the bombers. And so And sometime in that time, my grandfather died. I don't think he died like in a bombing, but he died sometime in 1940 to 45, somewhere in there. So yeah, it's a family business. It didn't take with my dad. My dad was an atheist, so I didn't really come to Christ until he left our home. But he wasn't about it. In fact, one of the last conversations I had with my dad, he told me that he had gone to church enough in the first few years of his life that he never needed to go again,
Mm.
which is such a lazy thing to say. Like, so like, well, yeah, yeah,
He's literally treating it as a duty. My
yeah,
duty is done.
yeah, yeah, and that's sad. And I think there's some indication that my grandfather also had some integrity issues. He was removed by the Seventh-day Adventists in 1927. I think for marrying my grandmother. I think at the time my grandfather was 40 and my grandmother was
Mm.
18. Yeah, I think he was hitting on girls in the youth group, essentially. All I can read is that he was removed for a moral failure. So I got to think that had an effect on my dad and his siblings also. Like, okay, dad's not who he says he is. So there was some stuff there as well.
So I have a C.S. Lewis quote here I'm going to read that I found has been very true in my life. Lewis wrote, "My frequent uneasiness comes from another source, the fact that apologetic work is so dangerous to one's faith. A doctrine never seems dimmer to me than when I have just successfully defended it." And then he goes on to talk about this a couple of times, or it's almost like he gets exhausted after he exerts his faith. And I've found that was always the case for me when I was growing up in Britain. I was sort of forced to become an apologist, whether I wanted to or not, because I was always in the minority. I was an American military kid in a British school, homeschooled, in fact, before that. And I just got rammed with all sorts of questions and some sincere, just trying to like take the Mickey is what they would call
Mhm.
and make fun of me, but I had to learn how to defend myself, and I do it really well, I think. And after I defended myself, I'd feel real dry and just sort of like, man, that feels crispy or crunchy or dry. And the fact that C.S. Lewis said that, I was like, thank you. No one else seems to have ever mentioned that. And then when after I was talking about this with someone, I went for a run, and when I came back, man, my muscles hurt. So my thing is, well, it feels like if you pull a muscle or you push it, man, it hurts. But do you have any insight of how does sermon writing help you and how does sermon writing hurt you?
That's interesting. I had not heard that Lewis quote before, but that makes a ton of sense. I think for me, when you're writing sermons, you feel like you're a professional Christian. So it's like, oh, I get paid to do this. This is cool. And I get to study the Bible for a living. And a lot of people think like that would be great. I'd be a better Christian if I studied it for a living. In the same way, I look at people who are like Navy SEALs and I'm like, you're paid to be in good shape. You're not doing the work. You have to get up and go do that. Like, so there is that of like, this is cool. I can like hang out and dig into some of the stuff, which I enjoy. I enjoy learning and trying to unpack the mysteries. But I think the two biggest dangers are one, I only unpack it so that I can teach it to somebody else without letting it teach me first. I think that's always a danger of like, oh yeah, yeah, I know. I haven't really wrestled with that, but I need to talk about that this Sunday. So I'm just gonna like put it out there and this is the way it is. Whatever. Let me tell you how it is from the scripture, and it's gonna be great because you're gonna love how I've unpacked it. So I think that's always a danger of like bypassing yourself and letting it work on you and going right to teaching it to other people. But also there's stuff that's like, did God harden Pharaoh's heart or did Pharaoh harden his own heart? Well, it says it 11 times, and four times it says he hardened his heart, and seven times it says God hardened his heart. And sometimes when you have to preach every week, maybe it's not a great sermon to stand up and be like, I don't know, guys, it's a mystery. Like nobody comes to hear you go, I'm not sure. It's just a mystery. But some of the stuff is just tough. What is Paul doing in the third heaven? What is he like? What is the thorn in his flesh? I'm like, sure, I can speculate all day. Who wrote Hebrews? Yeah, we can do that if you want, but I just don't think I'm going to know. So sometimes there's a downside to feeling like you have to have an answer. And then I think the last one is I think pastors can develop a really unhealthy codependency. People come to hear the answers and you get addicted to giving answers. And it's counterproductive for transformation because it becomes you need me so that you can change. And it's like, that's not what you want at all. You don't want to have a trainer standing there every day for you to actually lift the weight. Like you want to be a person who just lifts weights because that's who you are. And so it can be counterproductive. And I think there's a danger there as well that we can be so in love with our own ability.
That's a good point. Yeah. All right. I have a few quick questions to end with. You don't have to spend a lot of time. You can just answer, or unless you have a really big thesis you want to get into. Favorite book?
Honest, I mean, I'm supposed to say the Bible, right? But
Bible. There you go.
no, I'm gonna go with Dallas Willard's The Divine Conspiracy. That book just rocked me like 20 years ago, and I've read it a couple times. I would say after that, a book that I would try to read each year. I haven't done it in a couple of years. Probably time to pick it up again. Is Chesterton's Orthodoxy. Those are like Bible nerd books, but I'm not a big fiction reader. Poetry and fiction are like not my jam. So I'm like, So I would say Divine Conspiracy is just his exposition of the Sermon on the Mount is just brilliant, and I still think about it.
Favorite movie?
Oh, this is so bad. This is so lame. I'm such a product of my generation with this answer, but the first thing that comes to mind, and if I'm really like digging deep, I was like, oh, I'll find a better one. The first thing that comes to my mind when you said that is The Matrix, the original Matrix movie, because I read this really in-depth article that dug into all the philosophy of it. And now, like, every scene to me is like full of, oh, but that means this and it means this. And there's like lore and back, like, there's just so much to it that I'm like, this is brilliant what they did here with this movie. Now, I have to also pretend the other two Matrix movies don't exist to still enjoy the first one quite like I do. But I still think it was, and especially in 1999 or whatever it came out, there's nothing like that. It was a total game changer. So I'm going to go with that movie.
I know Kung Fu.
I know. It's so good.
All right, your favorite tree?
Oh gosh. The ones that don't drop crap all over my yard that I have to keep cleaning up. So definitely not hackberries. They're the worst. I'll tell you which one, and we don't have one yet, and I want to get one. A Japanese maple. I love that like reddish sort of maroon leaves, and it's just the right size. It's just really pretty in all seasons. So big fan of the Japanese maple.
And finally, either a location or landscape or a city or some place that is your favorite to visit and be in.
This one's changed for me in the last year because I've enjoyed Europe so much. I have so much fun memories of as a kid going to England, but I got to spend time in Cape Town, and it's not overrated. Cape Town, South Africa, the city and then the wine country around it, and I have family there, so that helps, but it's just like nothing else on earth. It's hard to get to. It's far away, but I want to get back because it's just really a lovely place.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you for chatting with us today, and I will see you in church.
All right, man. Thanks so much. It's been fun.
Thanks, Chris, for interviewing with me. And as always, I hope you'll join me again on the next episode and beyond. In the meantime, go dig a little bit deeper into the Word. And remember, in Christ, in Him, the Lord has set us free and put our feet into a broad and spacious place. Bammerhab, a huge word just waiting to be explored. So let's go exploring. If you like what you heard and you get a chance, please rate, like, and subscribe, or share this episode with your friends. For more information about Bammerhab, go to www.sdgmorgan.com or visit the Bammerhab Substack page. A special thanks to my friend Aaron Woodard for the graphic design of the show. Also, don't forget to check out this episode's show notes below.